All right, pop.
Do you want us to turn that up?
I'll get a little more volume on that. Calling this meeting to order. We have the agenda in front of us. Wait, I forget. Do we need a motion to approve the agenda? Yes, no?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve today's agenda?
So.
Oh, roll call. Oh, roll call first.
Ellie Blackwell.
Here.
Bill DeShane.
Here.
Chelsea Dollar.
Here.
Shanna Drahan. Here. Mark Regner.
Here.
Derek Milo. John Crush.
Here.
Ed Rogers. Jack Schmidt. Eric Tanz.
Here.
Nathan Triplett. And Steve Bagnosi.
Here.
Point of order, do I do the absences first or I go the agenda first?
Public comment. Yeah.
I have the agenda. Don't we need to do a motion to approve the agenda?
It's all in the consent. But public comment is first.
Okay, let me do a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Support.
And Phil, okay, so we have Mark and then Phil. Any changes or discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We are good. Okay. Item number 2 is the public comments on agenda items. I do not have any cards at this moment. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board at this point? Hearing none. Okay. The only item I think we have here then is the request for excused absences from 4 of our colleagues. Derek, Nathan, Ed, and Jack have all requested excused absences. Can I get a motion to?
So moved. So moved.
Mark? Okay, and we've got any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Okay, we are good. Chair's comments. My only comment is please, and I have 2 comments. Bear with me. I am chairing for Nathan today. Obviously, I'm a little rusty. And then in your packet, you have the annual disclosure form, policy number 209, code of conduct. Those need to be filled out, provided back to Tina. And I think that's all I have other than, yes, please bear with me as I attempt to keep my Robert's Rules of Order in business. Yeah.
Question, is that an annual form or is it the one quick it is? So that's been
Yeah.
done every year.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any other questions for staff on that disclosure form? Has everybody done it once? I'm trying to think. We knew, yes, everybody's done it at least once here. Yes, okay. It's like we don't have any less than years. So we should be good. I'll turn it over to Brent. I'm doing fine. It's fine. It's an easy agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of items before we get into the fun stuff. We do have our annual audit presentation today and also a follow-up on the ongoing discussion about the budget. So we will save as much time for those. I'd like to thank our drivers, staff, operations, everyone that's been involved in the Code Blue this year. I believe that we just ended a Code Blue yesterday. Is that correct? Still going tomorrow. Tomorrow is okay. We've just with the 24-hour a day service on the Route 1, as well as the shuttle that we're providing to the Let Center, we've exceeded 3,000 trips. We've also gotten contacted by a number of other brother and sister agencies about how do you do that, and how do you effectively put that into your operation? And it's actually quite easy. You just keep running the bus all the time on the route. Kidding aside, this discussion came up as getting a warming bus, because we've done warming buses for emergencies. Sometimes there's an apartment fire and we'll put a warming bus out at the apartment to keep either residents warm or first responders warm during cold spells. So the idea has always been there, and we have folks able to get out quickly, and we have people on reserve to do that. So the discussion led to how would we get a warming bus in an area near City Hall so that when folks are struggling, we get them overnight. Can you have them stay overnight at the CTC? We're not set up for that. Well, can we have them on the bus? Ultimately, We're in the transportation business, so our best foot forward is to extend our largest route, which is the Route 1, and it has been wildly successful. So I wanted you to hear that number, and we will keep coordinating with the city on that. And we will plan for next year because we believe this is going to continue annually. So we are setting up meetings with our local lawmakers and federal lawmakers. This is the time of year where all of the requests go in. We will be getting you a pamphlet which shows our request for phase 2 of the 511 building, which will go out into the grass area. And it will also kind of build out that Lenawee Street corridor to I like this idea because we always think of the transit center as a physical block and a physical location. And when you think of Ann Arbor and you think of a campus or an overlay district for transit, it's really a larger part of the south downtown. So Lenawee Street would effectively have cantilevered shelters over it, and they would be designed and very walkable between City Hall and Ovation, and that block would become on-off boarding, deboarding as well. So more to come on that. Finally, the long-awaited, anticipated presentation on solar is being bumped to April. Our consultant was unable to make it today. It would have been a packed agenda anyway. So, but rest assured, we've got some cool stuff that's coming in next month on that. And I will keep my comments to that, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you, Brad. All right. Our next item is the proposed consent agenda. We have, I should quickly counted, 4 items on the consent agenda today. Item A, approval of the minutes from the February 2026 board meeting. Item B, the treasurer's report for January 2026. Item C, janitorial services. And item D, establish 5310 subrecipient agreements with Disability Network Capital Area and Mason Community Services. Does anybody wish to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda and put on a business agenda? No? Seeing not, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Stephen, and then was it you, Kelly? Okay, and Kelly was the second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion's carried. Okay, that takes us to action item proposed discussion agenda. Item A, audit committee report, fiscal year 2025 financial statements and audit report.
I'll lead that discussion. With Derek's absence, the audit committee met on March 5th to discuss the audit report before you. Present were Derek, Chelsea, myself, Jim, and the audit team. Most significantly, there were no findings in this audit report. Unlike last year where we had a handful of findings that had to be corrected, there were none this year. And significant progress has been made on all the items from last year. It was a good report. If you looked over the audit in front of you, page 4, second paragraph states it very well. These statements reflect that the authority is in very strong financial health. As of September 30th, 2025, the authority's fiscal, which is our fiscal year end, the authority's net position stands at $62,886,788. That's my kickoff to it. I'll turn it over to Jim and to our audit team.
Excellent. Before you get started, did you say Chelsea? Were you also on that? Okay, and Derek.
Derek, yes.
Okay. I was trying to remember. Sorry, who was on the committee for that? Thank you.
Marianne is here to present audits.
All right, thanks, Jen, and thanks everyone. So happy to be with you all today. So my name is Chris Gilbert, Senior Manager on the audit. Typically, we would have the partner Jean with me today. She actually had a prior arrangement out of town, so she gets an excused absence from me. So bear with me tonight as well. So. But as was mentioned, we met with the audit committee and management recently and went over the audit results in depth. That meeting So we'll keep it really high level today just to kind of go over some key takeaways. Today, I do plan to cover three things. Opinion and our required communication with those charged with governance. A few high level financial statement highlights, just digging in a little deeper on just some key takeaways. And then the results of the single audit over federal awards. So all of the reports included in your board packet are included in your packet for reference, but as I mentioned, I thought it might make more sense for me to just kind of summarize high level, just some key takeaways rather than walk through page by page all of the documents. So I guess before jumping in, I did want to extend a thank you to management and the finance team, Jim, Brad, and their team for their cooperation. We filed, I believe, the first week of February, which is in advance of where we've been the last several years. So that's really a testament to just their preparedness, their thoroughness and responsiveness to the audit team. So just a big thanks to the team. So starting with our audit opinion. So we are once again issuing an unmodified opinion, which as an audit firm, that's the highest level of assurance we can give. Really just that we are the financial statements that you have are presented fully in all material respects in relation to the accounting standards. I do briefly want to flag one item that you might notice if you've looked at the opinion letter. So there is an emphasis of matter paragraph, but don't be alarmed by that. That's routine when there's a new accounting standard, which was the case this year. So there was a new accounting standard just related to the way that compensated absences, including vacation, sick leave, things like that, the way that they're calculated and reported. So all that really is saying is that the authority did adopt that new accounting standard. We audited that and it was not a material impact, but it's just drawing users' attention to that. That being said, before I move into the financial statement highlights, just wanted to cover our end of audit communication. So at a high level, this communication is pretty boilerplate and straightforward as you'd expect, as was mentioned, with no findings. So we performed the audit under the plan, scope, and timing that was communicated in our pre-audit communication that would have been sent out prior to the audit several months ago. No deviations from that. We encountered no significant difficulties throughout our audit, so no significant delays, no disagreements with management. We did not identify any misstatements as part of our audit procedures. So essentially all the things that you would want to hear. As is typical for an organization like CATA, we do issue a report in accordance with government auditing standards. So that being said, one of the things that I did want to mention is that there are sensitive accounting estimates in the financial statements. So that's one thing that's noted in our audit report. That's nothing different. It's just mentioning that your pension and OPEB liabilities are significant estimates, significant liabilities that are based on actuarial assumptions as well as many other assumptions. So we do audit that as part of our audit, and we had no issues and noted that those amounts were materially correct. So I'm also pleased to, again, just announce that there were no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. As was mentioned, there were a couple of findings that we had last year, but those were promptly and fully corrected by management. And we did audit that this year, and there were no repeat findings either. So I did mention just a couple of financial highlights. As was mentioned, the net position for the authority was just over 62 million at the end of the fiscal year 2025. Looking at your balance sheet, liquidity remains strong as current assets significantly exceed current liabilities. So at the same time, the authority does continue to have no long-term debt. So I think that's a big thing in your favor that allows some flexibility. And really the only non-current liabilities are those pension and OPEB liabilities. So looking at your income statement or your statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in that position, total operating revenues were about 13.5 million, while operating expenses were just approximately 70.8 million. And as is typical for a transit authority, operating revenues do not fully cover the operating expenses, as most of your revenues are coming from non-operating, what's considered non-operating, so property taxes, state and federal grants, and capital grants. So when you factor in all revenues and expenses, the authority did report an increase in net position of about 13 million. I know one important point of context that we've discussed in the past, and I know has been ongoing in budget discussions, is just a meaningful portion of that increase the last couple of years is just related to the exhaustion of the COVID-related funding over the last couple of years. Those COVID funds relieved or reimbursed operating costs at a higher rate than your typical, the authority's typical revenue model. So typically you have state operating grants that reimburse your operating costs at a percentage, and the COVID funding helped kind of subsidize some of that, and it was at 100%. So with that being said, that was a major contributor to the increase in that position over the last couple of years. So I know that there's been budget conversations, and management has anticipated this and has been looking into this, and that conversation is ongoing. So that being said, I know that over the next couple of years, reserve funds will, be, while longer term operating scenarios are continuing to be evaluated for the next couple of fiscal years. So that being said, pension OPEB. So looking at those long-term liabilities, we like to look at those and just view those at a snapshot at a point in time. But I think that being said, we like to let you know where those were at the end of the fiscal year. So the authority does have two pension plans, the union employees plan and the administrative employees plan. The union employees plan actually reported a net pension asset, which just means that it was over 100% funded, which has been the case the last couple of years. And the administrative employees plan did report a modest net pension liability, but it was well over 90% funded. And both plans are very well funded. So if you were to look at your peer agencies in the industry, many of those are not quite at that level. The state wants you at least at 60%. That's the benchmark that they've set. But many of your peer agencies may not even be at that 60%. So I think the authority's pension liabilities are in a really strong position. And that also brings me next to the other post-employment benefit liability. That one is also a longer-term obligation. The funded status has improved meaningfully over the last several years. And a few reasons for that. So the threshold was, so you're at just over 40% for fiscal year 2025. That actually is the benchmark that the state has set. That, if you were to look at, just 4 or 5 years ago, it has more than doubled in terms of the funded status. Some of that is attributed to things outside of your control, whether it's the market or actuarial assumptions. But outside of that, that there are things within your control that the authority has done to make meaningful progress on that, including closing the plan, contributing extra where you can, as well as many other things. So there's been a phased and intentional approach here, and in addressing these obligations, the authority has gotten to that 40% benchmark well in advance of what was originally planned. That being said, the last thing I have to cover is the single audit over federal awards. So because of the level of federal expenditures of federal awards, we are required to perform a single audit. That single audit was over one major program this year, which is typical for the authority for the federal transit cluster. And we also issued an unmodified opinion on that audit as well over compliance. So we had no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no findings in that audit as well. So that being said, in summary, the authority received clean audit opinions all around, no major findings, and overall a strong audit result, I would say. So that being said, I just wanted to once again thank management, Jim, Brad, their team, and the board on our team's behalf, and happy to turn it back over unless there are any questions or comments.
Does anybody have questions? Go ahead, Phil.
You mentioned that part of the reason our OPEB position has improved is due to the fact that the market returns have been strong.
Yeah.
And calculating those, are those done on a year-by-year basis, or is a 5-year smoothing figure actually used so it reflects the trend over the past 5 years?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And with the with the OPEB, you were talking about the OPEB plan in particular?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just over 40% now. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. Again, a big part of that is the market over the last couple of years. I think it was in 2022, it dipped and you recovered from there. But a lot of that has to do also with the closing of the plan. I think that has helped to make the movement there, as well as, but at the same time, there are other factors in terms of just actuarial assumptions that do get smoothed out over time. So that there's not always just a 1 year hit on that. A lot of that does take multiple years to kind of smooth out. So you got to look at it from a long-term perspective for sure. I don't know if there's anything to add from management there, but.
I have a little bit, and I appreciate the insight and for those board members that have been aboard for a while, and appreciate Jim's work on this. This is where in 18, we were facing the corrective action plan for the first time under a new Gadsby rule. I think it was 71, 72.
75.
Seems like close. All right. So, in all seriousness, this was new because CATA had made the decision prior to this to, if you recall, pay as you go.
Yes.
We were not addressing the liability. The liability was ballooning, and it was in a lot of cities and a lot of municipalities were facing both the pension liability issue as well as the OPEB. We've always had a very strong position in the pension side. So with the help from our members, we did close the plan, but with your help and Jim's help and Pat Lemon before, we started paying our bill and putting money away. So it was kind of a three-legged approach to this. We were lucky in the market, but we started putting more significant cash aside. The reason that's important, ladies and gentlemen, is because after this presentation, we're going to be talking about our budget. And you're going to see that line item that we put in our budget every year. And that can go up, that can go down. This is an estimate of what we need to do to stay on track. And we just got over the 40%, which I don't want to suggest that we're not going to be. And I don't know where the threshold is because the market can put you in the 40, out of the 40. I don't know how. I'll let Jim handle that. So we're just in think of it as the basketball tournament, and we just got into the tournament. So we're a low-ranked basketball team, but we don't want to push our luck with this. But having that trajectory is very important, and we collectively, we did it in a very short period of time. That's what I would add to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, just for perspective too, back in 2020, it was 12% compared to 40% in 2025. Again, got to look at it as a point in time, but that's tremendous progress. Some things outside of your control, some things within your control. So,
as a reminder, sorry for belaboring this, but it was probably the central point and goal when I joined as the CEO to take care of this as a fiscal issue. As a reminder, the OPEB is the health care for the retirees.
yes.
And that is a very sensitive issue, not only in this town and this agency. And we promised both the pension and the OPEB would stay solid, and we'll stand behind that commitment. And the union members in their negotiation have done the same. So it's a partnership.
Excellent. Any other questions for either management or for? No? Go ahead, Eric.
So you mentioned that there were a few things from last year's audit that needed to be corrected, and they were. Can you just remind me what those things were?
Yeah, so there were two findings. There was one material weakness related to just some internal control items that were just more back-end control. So to put a little more context, there was a new accounting standard that came out that required audit firms to scrutinize a little more outside of just the, what internal controls and segregation of duties. That also wanted us to look at system access and just look at that more robust. So it required a higher lens and a higher deep dive. So that being said, there were some things on the back end that were not, honestly, in our view, significant issues, but they were issues that required, there was just some additional controls on the back end related to system access just to kind of tighten things up. But we had no major concerns related to those. Sometimes when you hear material weakness, it's a big thing, but as an audit firm, we look at that. There's varying levels of that. It was not like we identified anything that was material. It's just a possibility when you look at system access, and there were just some things that the authority, needed to clean up from that perspective, as was the case for many entities last year. So that being said, fully corrected, and we have no concerns with that this year. The other item was just a few accruals that were just year-end accruals that were not material, but that we just identified over the course of the audit that were not significant, but management elected to post just to get it in the right period. But they were very minor accrual journal entries. I hope that answers the question. Okay.
All right. Any other questions? No. Otherwise, can I get a motion, which is very conveniently written in the packet, if somebody would like to make that? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just state the motion, if that's all right. The CATA Board of Directors accepts the CATA financial statement and report on federal awards for fiscal year 2025 and the communication to those charged with governance and management of CATA. Chelsea and then Phil gave it a second. Any other discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Okay, motion carries. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I meant to say it. Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate all the work. And thank you also to Jim and to all the team here. I know for my own organization, what goes into an audit, and it's always quite a lift. So thank you. That brings us to item 7, old business budget discussion. Are you going to kick that off or
Briefly,
okay?
I promise.
Listen, go.
As you recall, over the last couple of months, coming out of the retreat, we've had an ongoing discussion about the budget where we've done a deeper dive. Last month, we narrowed that. Andrew gave an update to slideshow and started looking at service that could be affected. And then we started concentrating on a 2-year budget cycle so that we could see the effect of this year going into next year and kind of seeing those ripples. We have spent just about every other day, Andrew, Jim, Kai, Dustin, operations in running some scenarios. And if I could, I would just have Andrew come back up and take it from there and update you on what our assignment was and what we did. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks for joining us again, Andrew.
Thank you, Brad. Board members, thank you. It's very nice to see you again. And I did bring some notes this time as we got some material to dig into, and I want to make sure I present it to you in a very clear fashion. So with that, I too would like to acknowledge staff and all the help involved. Our planning team, Dustin and Kai, and Jim Frent, our finance director, and all their work and support on this. Go ahead. As you'll recall, back in January, we presented 4 scenarios for fiscal 2027 for your consideration. These range from status quo in scenario 1 to a 5% cut in service in scenario 4. The details of which are shown here. Last month, we were asked to look at options that would entail something between scenario 2 and 3, and then something slightly above scenario 3, resulting in a little bit more drastic cuts. The presentation that I'm going to show you will show you the results of that exercise and help you make a better decision on how we move forward. As a starting point, scenario 3, just to recap, blends some administrative changes and limited surgical service cuts. This would include the elimination of underperforming routes, totaling about 5,000 to 7,000 hours, or roughly 1% of all of our service. This would also include not immediately filling administrative vacancies and cutbacks in miscellaneous administrative expenses. So based on the discussion we had last month, we've put together 3 scenarios for your consideration tonight. They are scenarios 2.5, 3 and 3.5. These represent the number of scenarios, not the percentage of cuts in each. As you can see, scenario 3.5 is the most aggressive, with a total of 9,000 to 12,000 hours of service being cut for fiscal 27. Again, this is for next year, not 28. But as you'll see in the subsequent slides, we wanted to get us to go a step further and show you where we would be at the start of fiscal 2028. Here we see scenario 2.5 graphed out. The top gray line represents where we are now with cash and invested funds in fiscal 26. The yellow line is fiscal 2027 under this scenario 2.5, followed by the blue line, which represents fiscal 2028. It assumes no new revenues for fiscal 28. The green line, of course, represents our mandated 3-month reserves.
Andrew, I'm sorry, can I just interrupt really quick? Did you say that was under 2.5?
Yes.
The yellow, okay.
Yes, this is 2.5 with no cuts in 2028.
Sorry, I see it up there now. It's blocked.
Sorry, it cuts it off.
Yeah, it's okay. Now I know where to look.
Here, sticking with scenario 2.5 for fiscal 27, we then imposed an additional 10% of service cuts for fiscal 2028. This will adjust the graph accordingly. Behind me here, you'll see the blue line for fiscal 28. We will sometimes in 28 fall below the mandated board policy amount. And then the following slides, you'll see how we can stay above that line. Next. Here we have scenario 3.0, or the middle scenario for fiscal 2027. Again, the top gray line is showing where we are today in fiscal 26. The yellow line is FY27 under this scenario 3, followed by the blue line, which will represent fiscal 28 if we were to only adopt scenario 3 and no cuts in fiscal 28. Okay, then here we have scenario 3 with 10% service cuts in fiscal 28. This will adjust the line accordingly, and it puts us in a better position than 2.5, but it's important to note that we believe the additional 10% in the second year is necessary to put us in a better position over the next 2 years, and it will minimize the cuts and negative impacts in fiscal 28.
Andrew, you have a question.
Yes.
If you don't mind taking them as we go,
Please.
then Steve, yeah.
Can you clarify? Additional 10% cut, what is, that's not a 10% service cut.
Yes.
It would represent a 10% in service hours on the street, yes.
Okay, so under, just for understand.
Across the board.
Okay, so what we'd be looking at then in this, and let's just use this scenario. What would the cut be in 2027?
It would be approximately 5,000 to 7,000 hours of service cuts.
Which is how many, what percentage?
It's about 1%.
Okay, so we're talking about 10 times the hit in
Yes.
28 as 27.
Correct.
That's what I need. That's what I wanted to understand. I wanted to, okay.
As Jim pointed out, it would be right off the top. So all the hours, including the staff and personnel needed to support that many hours. Would you like to follow up with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use that. Maybe.
So trying to do, when you start, the farther you project out, the trickier it gets.
Mhm.
So in year 2, rather than getting into deep dive details, we just wanted to show graphically, what we're at. So if you go back to the previous slide, that would be, that scenario 3.0 would represent that 1% service cut carried forward for 2 years, right?
Right.
And then this next one still does that with that 1% service cut and puts another 10% on top of that. And in fiscal 2028. And again, we just took 10% right straight across the board after, I built some inflation in, and then 10% straight across the board just to see where that would put us. Keeping in mind, we don't know at this point what state funding for fiscal 27 is yet. So what we're trying to do is just give the board an idea of big picture what's we're going to be at if we continue on the path that we're on. So
Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you for the question. So here we have 3.5. So as Jim mentioned, this is 3.5 with no additional cuts in FY 2028. Then, as a reminder, scenario 3.5 had 9,000 to 10,000 hours of service cuts in fiscal 27, and then this graph here showed no additional cuts in 28. Next slide. And then lastly, we have scenario 3.5 with the additional 10% cut in the second year of 2028. It's the same 10% that will apply to the prior two scenarios. Of course, this is the most drastic of the options, but it does put us in the best position going forward, not only for FY 2028, but also FY 29 and beyond, provided that there are no additional revenues coming from the state or federal government. So essentially, one of the takeaways from what I'm sharing tonight is the more we prepare in fiscal 27, the less we will have to do in 2028 to ensure we meet the mandated board policy of 3 months of cash to invested funds. With that, final slide, please. I wanted to share with you one more time as a point of reference. The slide behind me here showed that it was shown last month, and it merely exemplifies some suggestions with hours and dollars attached to each one. These are potential services that could be reduced. I should point out a couple of things. First and foremost, I don't present them tonight as a recommendation that they all must go, or that this is an all-inclusive list. It's not. But it does represent some services that are what we would define as underperforming. And so it help us cumulatively get to that 9 to 12,000 hours in cuts for fiscal 27. So with that, one more point I'd like to address. Toward the bottom, you see the overnight route 1 and the Let's Community Shuttle. We only put those out there as extra service examples for unplanned services. When this slide was presented last month, obviously the hours and costs for each of those two was lower. All told, we are up to just under 400 hours for the overnight route 1 on the Let's Community Shuttle. 400 hours of unplanned service. With that, I'm happy to take any further questions.
Bill?
You predicted no additional revenue in these scenarios, correct? The state and federal funding levels will remain the same?
These scenarios assume that they will remain the same, yes.
And Brad, you had indicated last meeting that if funding levels for transit remain the same, many large transit agencies would likely go under. Is that still your assertion?
That is still my assertion.
Okay.
Go under, have to dig in deep to their cash and invested funds, slash service, certainly at the levels we're talking about here. Some may do it in their next budget.
Other question? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. First, an observation. I participated in the MPTA Transit Day at the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
That was also a joint effort with Transportation Riders United out of Detroit and a couple other groups. Their ask was for additional money above and beyond the governor's proposed budget. The governor's proposed budget does include a slight increase in funding. Um, given the way budgets seem to be coming together as a result of last minute chaos in the legislature, I think the only prudent thing we can do at this point is the no additional revenue baseline. The other question I have, and I apologize for missing the discussion at last month's meeting. Is there any value in looking at a bigger cut in 27? Does that then allow for lesser than 10% in 28?
So short answer, yes. And that was one point I wanted to make tonight, which is that whatever we do in 27 will mitigate what has to be done in 28 under the assumption all the revenues remain the same. Of course, everything being connected, you know, the most aggressive scenario I presented tonight shows 9,000 to 12,000 service hours being cut in 27. We start increasing that. That doesn't necessarily mean that the fiscal 28 budget has to be at 10% or 5%. Everything's interconnected. So if we increase the hours cut in 27, yes, it will reduce the cuts for 28. But, you know, for us, it's always, how do we stay above the green line, which is the 3-month minimum reserve. So yes, anything that's done now will mitigate the future.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
I was just going to say, I mean, I'm so pleased to see the 2-year look at this. And I do think it's important because I know, and we did talk a little bit about this, maybe you can hit this, but there are some things that can't be done as quickly as we would want to do them in this year too. And so I think it's really important for us to see that second year and understand as a board, like we may do this cut this year at whatever percent, but it's the, you know, whatever. I think the 3.5 turns in is about 2%. Is that what you said? The 3.5 is a little more than 1%.
Go back one slide, please. So this is the 3.5 scenario.
Mm-hmm.
It represents 9,000 to 12,000 hours reduced in 27.
Okay.
Which is 1.5% to 2%.
Okay.
And then the additional 10% in 28.
Okay.
As evidenced by the blue line at the bottom.
Can you also maybe both speak to, you know, then some of the flexibility that gives us in potential changes in revenue, you know,
Absolutely.
You know,
If you don't mind, Andrew. So it's not a secret if you go back and watch last month that I tend to be on the let's cut later, let's hold service, because there's so many strings attached to it. You've got fleet sizes, employees, it is affecting people on the street. But to Commissioner Grebner's point, he's asked for years, is how do we make it more efficient? So we have the COA coming in at a particularly awesome time, because we're going to start answering these questions and probably add to one of their tasks to be able to fill out this service question over the last couple of years. So what does all that mean? The more time we can buy and balance it with the least amount of dramatic cuts and having our money saved and then go find other revenue sources. We've got contingency in there. We've got some ideas on how to raise revenue in some other areas. So simply put, I wouldn't want to go any further. I don't want to go to 3.5, but I will tell you that the smart people around me who know how these buttons work and are able to feather this out have convinced me that 3.5 is where we need to be. I would be really concerned about going further than that. With that said, that gives us the motivation then to get that 10% lower for next year. Now we're dealing with this year and next year, and we start working on immediately. We start working on the budget for the following year, revenues and partnerships and so forth. Does that answer your question?
it answers mine. Steve, do you feel like, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it does. And at some point, I would like to see it. the chart we suggested service cuts that you had up for 27.
Next slide. 11. No, 11.
Yeah.
When we go into 28, I'd like to see something similar.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to answer that, back to the COA.
Yeah.
We're putting examples up here because the board asked for how many customers are going to be affected. So what
Right.
we did is it's a la carte.
Right.
Here's how it could be. I don't think these will be the cuts, by the way, put it on the record. So the COA comes in and we've got
Can you say what that acronym means?
Yes, COA is the Comprehensive Operational Analysis that planning is working on, interviewed everybody across the region. Where do we put service? Where do we change service? It's really the big planning document for the future. They'll start getting us information to populate this table, next year's budget table, and then we continue that discussion in the budget cycle.
And just to reiterate, you know, I mean, I think this has been really helpful. We had a lot of conversation about it last month as well. I mean, these are examples. These are hypotheticals. So I just want to be really clear, right? Like we're the policymaking board. They are going to take our recommendations about budget amounts and sort of the values of things that I think we've given a lot of input on in terms of what we value in terms of service and how that matches to our policy. But, and then you guys are going to go back and pull the levers and figure out what that actually looks like. So, but it's helpful. It's been real, at least for me, I think others would agree that it's helpful to see sort of some of the areas and some of the orders of magnitude to just get a sense of like, what do we mean when we talk about 9,000 hour to 10,000 hour cut?
If I may, thank you for that comment. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge some of the comments last month about concerns about services that may be perceived as underperforming, but they're very essential. They're very important. So, for instance, a bus off of Route 1, reducing the frequency from 12 to 15 minutes is not as consequential as a lot link or a night owl that helps people who have no other options. We're very cognizant of that. And thank you for acknowledging that point, because we are very much in tune with, you know, just because we don't have a bus full of people on every trip doesn't mean it's not important. What we were trying to do with this chart was exemplify different densities, if you will, of service. So a whole bus on Monday through Friday, what does that look like? Hours and dollars versus a night owl bus on MSU's campus. So thank you for bringing that up.
Bill?
I too like the 3-5 idea, even though it would mean cuts it in the most cuts in service. I think the value of this exercise is to look at all we do and find those inefficiencies at the margin. You mentioned bus one. In terms of most productive use of CATA dollars, a bus one route most days is the most effective dollar we're going to have. Some of these nighttime services where our cost per ride could be $200 for a ride, for example, is not our most useful efficiency. If we go with the 3-5 scenario and funding does get restored, so we're not looking at a 10% cut, we could take that savings and then apply it, right, not back to the inefficiencies at the margins, but apply it to innovative ideas that could provide those essential services to the unmet needs in an innovative way that we haven't addressed yet, or we haven't tried yet.
Great.
I hate to use the credit card analogy, but we've talked about that before. We have no debt. We're paid up. Your OPEB is now above the 40% mark. It was at 12, which means that we were paying a lot lower in cash for each year in that investment. Don't stand up, Jim. I love Jim as the banker because that's what we need, is that focus. But whether it is, we're talking about the future now, when we start this conversation, we're positioning ourselves to make good decisions down the road. You don't have to put that money in every year. You can start creeping off that 40%, knowing that it will buy time. Credit card. We're not there. I don't suggest we go there, but we are not taking this to the bone here. The preventative maintenance, which is a capital item, you can move over to operations. One of our partners to the west side is doing that right now. So the budget and debt and cash and invested funds, there's a lot of moving pieces. And what we're trying to do is put it all out there so you can see it transparently. A lot of places are not doing that right now. It's, you got a budget, debt. Are you over, are you under? We got a lot of moving pieces here. We'll give you a lot of options in the future.
I will just say I too am in support of the 3.5. I think, looking at what you've presented, what we've talked about in the last 2 months, I don't see any other option there. So I'm definitely, oh, you're raising your hand. I thought you were pointing to someone. I was like, who are you pointing to?
The future.
The future. That's good, Mark. It was the future.
Observing CATA for many, many years, the future has always been very dark, and whenever we get there, it's never as dark as it was when we saw it 4 years in advance. And if you put together a collection of all of the 4 or 5 year projections, goodness, we'd be deep underground by now. We'd be in terrible shape. So maybe this one will be different. Maybe things will actually turn out as bleak as this. The main thing I'd say is I haven't heard anybody say we're in a very fast changing environment and we're a very slow changing group. And that what we ought to be focusing on, we ought to be using our time here, is not just considering in a static way how we could provide less service and minimize the impact on our riders. We ought to be asking, how has the world changed in the last 5 years that we've ignored? Okay, how is the world going to change in the next 5 years that we are going to ignore? What are other transit agencies beginning to do that we haven't started thinking about yet? What are the possible partnerships? What are the possible technological changes in transportation that we're not taking up yet? I just, I don't even have to say anything about the fact that we are looking at driverless vehicles, and not us, we're not looking at them. We've never even thought about them. TNCs and so forth. But I will just tell you that today, right now, Route 20 is circulating through Spartan Village, servicing 16 bus stops in a quarter of a square mile of abandoned buildings. And we're going to do it at least through August. I sure hope we'll stop providing service by August 15th, but we are providing wonderful service to a bunch of weed trees that have grown through parking lots out there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just going to say that we've been concentrating on the future, and over the last several years, we've been ignoring it, was what I was going to say. Kidding aside, Commissioner, one of the things that we talked about was your questions about the TNCs and the experiments that we've been having on rides, and where it may not be one size fits all. And some of these that we may have to change the operation into a TNC. Now, I didn't want to spoil everybody's fun today and get direction from the board, because we have the next couple months before the COA crew is back. But I assure you, sir, that we have heard you loud and clear. TNCs are going to be in the discussion.
Bill.
To that extent, could we devote a meeting to Mark's ideas and just look at what's out there, look at innovative ideas, things that we haven't looked at so far, and bounce them around? It's easy for board members to come up with some great ideas. Staff has to tell us.
Absolutely. In fact,
If this is a pie in the sky that can only be done by an agency 10 times our size, or it's something that with board direction we could focus on and start a pilot project for, or try it out at some levels. I respect the fact that Mark's been on the board 20 years, 30 years. How long have you been on the county board?
It depends on what you mean by on.
Okay.
I was kicked off at one point and kicked myself back on, so I've had an
Total
official
service.
I've had an official seat for what, 8 years, maybe 7 years?
certainly why I've been here.
Yeah, that's right. But I've been hanging out with CATA since 1982, so.
Wow.
And riding since before CATA existed, back when it was just the Model Cities bus in Lansing.
Okay. Mark, can you help put this meeting together in terms of getting focus, asking staff to focus on these
I'd be
ideas?
happy to give them 10 ideas they've already heard, all of which they have examined a little bit and shied away from, but I'd be happy to provide those.
I've heard a couple of those. I'm sure other board members have. Let's look at them all at once, or at least begin looking at them. You've got some experience and you've done some, I think, good homework on this that the rest of us maybe haven't had time to do.
And I get, what I just said, really, governments move very slowly. I mean, CATA moves faster than the county does. God knows the county is, I won't tell you any county stories, but goodness, we're just history. We're almost like not a functioning body of government. We're just really a historic buildings and stuff and rituals. So it's kind of like the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. We march around, but we sure hope we don't have to defend anybody because we don't even know how the muskets would be fired. Anyway, so the CATA is probably faster moving than a typical transit agency. But really, the world is moving so fast here, and nobody is coping with it. And I really think that the way to minimize impact on potential riders and the public in general, and to maximize the efficient use of the monies we're entrusted with. Remember, we're entrusted with way more money than almost any transit agency in the state. We have so much more money per capita than Flint or Grand Rapids or Detroit. We really are very blessed. The best way to put that money to use and to provide useful service to the public has got to be to move into the future faster than we would like to. And so many of the things that are up there, I won't start detailing them, but you just ask yourself, that made perfect sense 30 years ago, but why do we do that now? Why are we providing that service the way we're providing it? And the answer is, can we tell you the history of it? Yeah, exactly. So anyway, thank you. I'd be happy to participate, but mainly I'm just putting my shoulder behind the wheel and trying to move it forward a little bit faster.
Well, I'll add and then I'll let Brett, that I think as we are having some of the conversations, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but as we're having some of the conversations with the results of the COA, I think there's going to be some opportunity to do that. I think we're going to have some data we can use. And what might be interesting, Phil and Mark and others, is, okay, then let's talk about some of those ideas that are out there. What are, some of the innovations we've seen in places we all experience transit in other communities too. What are some of the things that, are those issues that are keeping us up at night or whatever that is? And I think we can have that conversation in a somewhat structured way as it relates to that versus just, what if we did this? What if we did that? And then the only other point I'll just quickly make on that is, I think also from a timing perspective, I'm cognizant that for the next little bit here, you guys need to get the budget. We need to get the budget done.
Yes.
So we do have that timing issue, and I think we've got to allow them to. We have to put a pin in it today of where we want that to land, and then allow you guys to get that done so we can get through the budget. So that timing might work with the COA conversation. Are you nodding your head? Does that seem right? Do you want to add to that? I didn't want to take this question, but yeah. Go ahead.
Member Bagnosi, and then I'll have some comments.
What I'd like to see ideally is a thorough look at, and I realize I'm not an expert in this field, but look at is there a way, what we should be trying to do is looking at when we have, how am I going to describe it? The most costly per passenger of our services. Is there a way that, for example, if you've got a 40-foot bus running with one person on it, okay, at certain times of the day, we should be looking at potentially maybe we're providing service to certain areas of the city by different modes during different periods of time. I mean, during the peak, like, for example, you're talking about eliminating late night service on Route 1. Can we substitute a different type, a less costly service less ridership. And is that a way? I mean, I think it behooves us to look at minimizing people's loss of access by being flexible with the mode of service we provide to try to reduce the effect of whatever of cuts.
Agreed.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we've had the discussion in the past about having a separate meeting and retreats, and it doesn't work out. We can't get everybody in the same room. And so we kind of went to the hybrid approach of setting aside old business and that agenda, and we're structuring that out pretty much every meeting now. So what we can do, if you don't mind me addressing that, sir, is that getting with Commissioner Grebner or other ideas and making sure that they're on the list for discussion at this board meeting. How I protect staff and what I would ask this board for is, if you think about the last 3 months of conversations and the deep dive that we've taken on this, I don't believe other transit agencies are doing this at this level, the transparency of what's going on. So we're not only raising your expectations for your jurisdictions, but everybody that's watching at home, the drivers, the riders, everybody's going to be chiming in on this. I want to be careful as the administrator that we're not taking off in different directions. You trust us to do this, we'll bring it back for you. In fact, our charge today is, and we're about a month behind, although Jim has kept the pace going with staff, is we need the number, which I'm suggesting is 65 million, which will be down from last year's operating budget. That represents the 3.5. And what we can do, as we've done each meeting, is bring back and address those concerns. What I don't respectfully want to do is go off the rails from the process we're in. If it isn't being addressed, or you have ideas, call me, contact me. I think you know that I have integrated your ideas thoroughly. And I say that respectfully because they are great ideas. So they're going to get in there and you're going to be heard, and we're going to have the discussion about MPTA's involvement in what our top priorities are going to be. But today, I need staff to get back to work on the budget, so I have a policy deadline of June 30th to get that to you. That then will have the detail in it that we debate over, and the public will come in and talk about. At the same time, we have the COA. You will be involved in all of that, if that's okay.
I'm seeing heads nod. Go ahead, Phil.
One quick follow-up to Mark's comment about being well-funded. CATA is well-funded. Ingham County is well-funded. So we have the highest taxing county in the state of Michigan. We have the highest mass transit tax in the state of Michigan. We have so City of Lansing, City of East Lansing, Meridian Township, other municipalities paid some of the very highest taxes in the state. So we have it incumbent upon us to be innovative and give them something exceptional for their tax dollars, because we're giving them so much of it. To your point, you have an exceptional staff, and we were led by an exceptional executive director. So I think if anybody can do it, you and your team can do this.
Here's the caution. If you go, and I write them down and I dream about them at night, because the comments that you say affect the direction that we go. There were a number of comments over the last 2 meetings about labor not losing a contract. And so every time one of these variables is put on the list and you put them in together, you start to mire down into, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. So that is the challenge. One of the biggest challenges, ladies and gentlemen, is the point about how well-funded we are. We have the largest paratransit ridership in the state. We put out extraordinary, in fact, as I've dug into the budget and said, whoa, we put out a lot of service. And I only say that because I don't want to disrupt the public about that level of service, but we are way above and beyond what we need to do legally versus fixed drop. So there are areas that we can cut, but you don't see that up there because you've got really some holy ground coming. So that's why the balance between, we think this is a fair number, we're going to give you a real good shot at this, we'll keep the conversation going, but those phones will start ringing if we go too deep. We know the charge that you've given us. How's that for not answering your question? We've heard you.
So I'm gonna just sort of summarize and make sure we're seeing nodding heads. 65 million is the target-ish that we're going, or the target that we're going for. That represents scenario 3.5 that we've all seen up in here. Brad and his team are going to go back and they're going to present it, work that through the budget, and they're going to present us that. And then, as you said, we'll have a public meeting. We'll be able to talk about those details. What you are hearing, I think, from the board and what you've routinely heard from the board is that there are certain values around service and customer service. There are also interests and passions around making sure that we are thinking about the future and changing technologies, and that we expect you all to be thinking about those and rolling some of those considerations in. You are all learned on this and deal with other transit agencies and go to conferences, and you know all of these issues. So we want to be seeing those considerations. You know, we don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of this particular this or that. We want to know that those are being factored in as you're making your decisions on where these are rolling through the systems. And we can talk about those as we are talking about the budget and the COA. Does that seem like a decentish summary of the conversation right now and where we are? I don't think we need a motion on this, but I definitely want to see some heads nodding on that number so that you guys can go do your work. Yes? Okay.
So we'll start with a 3.5 and we'll have the 10% in the next budget year as the sidecar, and start a dual track there.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that for all of my having served kind of hectoring the CATA administration, not just this one, but the previous one and 30 years of them, I'm actually remarkably patient. I'm really not, you know.
I say that all the time.
I just feel like, you know, kind of like trying to hurt them a little faster, but really, I don't ever hit them or anything. I don't actually use the whip. I just snap it overhead.
Well, in this day and age too, where, you know, public service can be a dangerous thing. I'm glad to hear that. But I'll just end too with saying thank you guys to you all. I think Brad made this point. I don't know that a lot of other boards of other transit agencies are getting this level of dialogue and in-depth discussion, particularly prior to actually having a budget document in front of them, to have this upfront process. And I know it's been work, so I am very grateful. I think everybody here is, so appreciate that and appreciate you. Thank you. Okay. You're welcome. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Jim.
That brings us to item number 8, new business. We have no new business we have no new business this evening. Unless I'm missing something.
I did miss one bullet, if I might, Madam Chair.
You might add
All
it.
right.
I mean, we did call for changes to the agenda, but that's okay. You know, I'm just kidding. But
You're tough.
I,
Chelsea, congratulations on the grant award that was in the paper yesterday. We are part of that. That was your, it was $5 million for placemaking in Rio Town, and it's going to be really cool for all the cool people moving in there. We are on the map and we are represented, so thank you for that. And that is, as we were talking about innovative thinking and capital items and things, and that's getting into other programs where we can share that vision is helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
congrats. Thank you. That was a good addition. I'm glad you made it.
They're not all good. They're not all good.
Okay, item number 3. This is our final public comment. Again, I have not received any cards. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the board? City, well, does he need to do a card?
I certainly would say no.
Okay, I think, feel free to address us, council member.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Steve Whalen. I am newly elected to the East Hampton City Council. I was elected in November. Still adjusting to many of the commissions, the boards that I represent. So I am delegated to assist and oh, you're not on? I'm sorry.
So my history is a little bit unique. I spent 25 years as a police officer for the city of East Lansing. So I spent a lot of time with CATA in those 25 years, most of the time with crashes, and we're talking about crashes, right? So I spent 5 years as a referee or a coach at the CATA Roundup where the drivers come out. Are you still doing that? So I did that between 2005, 2010.
Yes.
And drivers would go out and miss cones and do incredible things. And then we judged the most efficient driver. So that was really, it was a community event. I've got great memories of that. I just really appreciate how CATA provides for us to become more of a walkable community. We're contemplating several big developments in downtown, and we're saying that we're kind of aiming at only 20 to 30% car ownership in those facilities, which CATA is a very big part of that. Also, I appreciate working with MSU and making some good headway there. So anyway, I just want to introduce myself. I appreciate what all you do, and I will continue to connect with Mr. Aheim about how I can continue a part of this board. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Pleased that you could join us and appreciate your service. And I think just warning to you that you're never going to adjust or get caught up. So just, you said I'm starting to, and I'm going to dispel that myth for you that probably won't really happen. But to the extent we can help with that, we would love to. And I think I'm happy to have you here as the East Lansing rep on there. So any other members of the public? Okay, seeing none. I always forget, we don't need a motion to adjourn. I just get to bang the gavel. We are adjourned at 5:11.
You did it.
I still did my best.